So this was in Tafshin Mem Ches in 19, well, it was November time, probably it was still the fall of 1987. The Rebbe very, very rarely then gave out kuntresim. Later, it was much more frequent. This was very rare. This might be the only kuntras I got in that fashion from the Rebbe when I lived in Karnheitzem for 2 years, Mem Ches and Mem Tes. It was a very short distribution. You had to really be there and on the spot to get it. And then I think the next day, the secretariat gave out, they made other copies. But this I personally received from the Rebbe, so it's very precious to me. Very famous mimer of the Rebbe Rashab. So today is Chav Cheshvan. Today is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab is, if my math is correct, 164, turning today. So it's been a few years, and this mimer, the Rebbe wrote it in response to, at that time, some friction going on between Hasidim, really analyzing and dissecting, which is, of course, the style of the Rebbe Rashab, who was called the Rambam of Hasidic thought. Enormous, organizational breakdown of concepts. So here he's doing this in terms of understanding Sinas Chinam. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the mimer opens up with an ice on questions that we're going to skip because we're never going to get to the answers. So we might get to some of the answers, but we're going to go to the Avos Yisrael piece. What we're talking here is the idea of Midian. And what the Rebbe Rashab develops is that Midian is the force of opposition to Havaya. Like the pasuk says, Hashem spoke to Moshe to take the vengeance of Bnei Yisrael from the Midyanim, and then Moshe says, Hechaltzu meitchem, fortify yourselves, lates nikmas Hashem b'Midyan, to take Hashem's vengeance. So this is the vengeance of Hashem because the force of Midyan, that energy, that klipa, that evil is an evil that fights against the very name of Hashem. When the Midyanim brought the Jews to sin. Of course, the sin of the Midyanim, this is after, just putting it briefly in the historical context of what happened. Bilam is hired by Moav to curse the Jews. Of course, as we know, the curses turn into blessings, and they're so frustrated, they want to curse him, and God's not letting. Bilam said, listen, I could give you an idea. Their God hates immorality. Let's take this plot. Let's take these beautiful women, and we're going to have them seduce the men. And before they can do anything, they first have to serve the idols. So we get idolatry, we get adultery. We're going to get these horrific sins, not exactly adultery, but inappropriate relationships and idolatry, and then God will take care of them. And that was the plot that unfortunately was very successful. So in this plot, Moav and Midian together plotted this and together sent their girls out to seduce the Jewish men. And now we're taking the vengeance against Midian. Of course, it's a question, why not against Moav? And that's a whole interesting concept, but that will really take us on another, really want to stay focused on the mimer here. The Rebbe is saying, how did Midian manage to bring these men to sin like this? Because they have such an evil in them. And that evil spread and affected and harmed them, reached the Jews, attacked the Jews, and brought the Jews to this sin. In Eis Gimel, the Rebbe says, what is this evil of Midian? Midian is from the word madon umeriva, which means controversy, separation. And then the Rebbe translates that, meaning to say, sinas chinam, baseless hatred. That is the energy of Midian. And that's the antithesis of godliness. Because godliness comes from Havaya. If you remember, we learned that a few Maimarim ago. Havaya Echad, right? We come from Havaya. Havaya is the idea of oneness, of Achdus, of Echad. So on the side of godliness, there's Achdus, there's unity. On the side of Midian, there's Hechaltzu, there's separation, there's Pirud, there's conflict. And the Rebbe says this is, in essence, we could say this root difference between godliness and evil. Is there achdus? Is there oneness? Is there unity? Or is there conflict? Is there separation? Is there this baseless hatred? And of course, we go back to this famous example that we quote very often, that Yaakov, ayin nefesh, 70 soul, because the 70 children of the family of Yaakov were so one, were so united, were so on the side of godliness. It was in the singular, though there were 70 of them. Conversely, Esav, says about Esav, when he had only a few people with him, it was already spoken of in the Lashon of Rabbim, of many. Because even if, I don't know, I think it was like him plus 6 other people, but, well, that's 7 people, that's not a lot. No, they're all separate worlds. They're all so separate. They're all so different. They're all such conflicting and colliding worlds that 7 people, and it's already, a multitude of separation. Yeah, well, it says here 6. So I don't know if it was Esav plus 6 or if it was Esav including Esav. There was 6 souls, and it was already written in the plural because there was such separation between them. So going to Eis Daled, I want everyone to understand I am doing a very, very, very cursory overview of this mimer. I don't want to shortchange it at all. We're just highlighting some concepts in honor of Chav Cheshvan, and maybe we'll rain a little on some of the ideas. You could stop me at any point, question, reflect, comment. I'm just overviewing. So in Eis Daled, what is this meaning of Sinas Chinam? Now we got to the heart of the mimer, okay? We raced through 3 Eisias. Now in Eis Daled, we got to the real meat of it. What do we mean by the term Sinas Chinam? Right? Which I guess you translate as hatred for free. Or of course, as we try to make it sound nicer in English, we call it baseless hatred. What do we mean by that? So the Rebbe says, Sinas Chinam means that there's no one specific reason. There's no detail. There's no fact. There's nothing that's causing the hatred. In other words, there's specific attributes that, this person's arrogance, this person's meanness, this person's stealing, this person's gossiping. Those are specific details that could lead you to have very negative feelings. That doesn't mean you're allowed to have those negative feelings. But there's a reason why you have those negative feelings. That's not Midian. That, the Rebbe says, you can reflect on the 7 nations of Canaan, right? That each one of the 7 nations represented another evil version of a midah. So someone could be an expression of the negativity of love, or the negativity of strength, or the negativity of, and those could cause reasons for negative emotions. Midian, we don't have any reasons. It's not a specific midah. It's not a specific attribute. It's not a specific trait. It's just, I hate you. And since I'm hating you, since I have all this negative feeling for you, I'm going to find a reason to fight with you. I'm going to make up a problem. That's Midian. So the Madon and the Meriva, that you can't stand the person. And since you can't stand the person, you justify why you can't stand the person by coming up with reasons why you hate them. We see this in anti-Semitism, right? What do we see so interesting about anti-Semitism? Whatever that culture hates, that's what the Jews are. So if you despise the rich, all the Jews are rich. If you despise the poor, all the Jews are poor. Before World War II, in the Soviet Union, the Jews are capitalists. In Germany, the Jews are communists. The Jews are very fluid, chameleon people. Whatever you don't like, that's what the Jews are. So that means first there's a hatred, which we can't articulate, we can't give a reason for. And then once we hate you, we're gonna tag on a reason. We're gonna attribute to you something that we dislike to justify these feelings that we can't really know why we have them. We just have them. We just have them. And that's what the Rebbe says. Why do we call it sinas chinam? Shusoneh also chinam. Because he hates him for free. He hates him without any cause. Allo davar. And a person could say, no, that's not what's going on by me. I have a lot of reasons why I don't like this person. The Rebbe says, when I say the Rebbe here, I mean the Rebbe Shab. The Rebbe says, sometimes you might have a few little trivial details. But those trivial details don't add up to your, we'll call it, dislike of this other person. In essence, it's Midian. Recognize it. It's Midian. It's just hatred. And then you're taking your few little details and you're going to make a whole challenge and you're going to add a lot of salt and pepper to them and you'll try to create some justification. So even if you say, no, I have reasons that came before. No. That's not what's going on. That's not what's going on. It's a sinas chinam, and then, you can construct reasons to justify it. So why does this happen? Why would people be afflicted by the klipa of Midian? Why are we hating? I mean, it's a very strong word, but that's the word the Rebbe is using it, so I'm just translating it to English. Sinas chinam. Why are we hating someone else? And the Rebbe says, and I could give you all a guess, I bet you would tell me the guess right away, and it's been a long time since you learned this mimer. Why do you think a person is afflicted with sinas china, with the klipa of Midian? What do you think is their spiritual weakness that makes them susceptible?
Could be jealousy sometimes.
Jealousy, okay. Are you thinking of how the world treats us? That's definitely rooted in jealousy.
And
But what would be the
probably
roots of the jealousy? What would be the roots of jealousy?
I don't know. It could also be power
selfishness, ego.
Selfishness, ego. Rachel, what was the other thing you said? You said power?
Power struggle.
A power struggle. So a power struggle goes back to the root of all evils, as Leah got it, ego, yeshus, self. The more self we have, of course we all have self, but the more aggrandized is our sense of self, the less room, patience, tolerance, respect, space we can give to anyone else's self. It just doesn't work. There's a Maisa, a vignette with the Tzemach Tzedek, with the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, that someone once came to the Tzemach Tzedek and he complained that, wherever I go, people are always stepping on me. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, because you spread yourself all over the place. Wherever they step, there's you. That's like, wow. Ouch, In other words, very often the person with the yeshus is the person who's shrieing that he's being victimized, that wherever I go, they're stepping on me, because you can't see yourself. It's very hard to see in yourself your root issues that are then being manifested in this. So the Rebbe said, I see some people joined. I'm just going to synopsize in like 30 seconds.
This is my mother. My mother is in New York now.
Oh, you must be in America, because I saw Esther Hadassah. I'm like, I sure hope you don't have insomnia now in Israel. I'm glad it's from New York. So it's Chav Cheshvan. We're focusing on this mimer of the Rebbe Rashab, Hechaltzu. And the Rebbe Rashab is looking at Midian, the nation the Jews were told by Hashem to take vengeance from. And Hashem calls it vengeance of the Jewish people for what they did to us. But Moshe calls it vengeance of Hashem, because Midian is, the goal is to attack, to destroy, to claw at Hashem, that energy. And the manifestation of that is sinas chinam, which we just said means hatred that you don't have any reason. You hate. And after you hate, you come up with a reason. And now, the Rebbe said, uncovering a few more layers, that the root of the sinas chinam is yeshus. Not a surprise, right? This is it. And of course, yeshus is the struggle of mankind, right? I mean, we all struggle with yeshus one way or another, on some manifestation or another. I don't think any of us will say we're yeshus free, but obviously there's levels. And the more we recognize that, and we say, wait, sinas chinam? Well, I hope I don't have that. But in a more subtle form, can I see it in myself? And then yeshus, yeah. And the yeshus leading to that, not having patience, tolerance, space for someone else. The Rebbe says, absolutely. The Rebbe is giving over this mimer because there was friction among the Hasidim. So we're talking about these concepts of sinas chinam and yeshus. We don't mean them like in outer space or in a museum somewhere. We mean them like this is the reality sometimes of our lives. And then we want to really look at our lives through the paradigm of Hasidic thought. If we want to heal by looking at Hasidus and understanding what Hasidus is telling us about ourselves. Not what Hasidus is telling us about other people, but what Hasidus is telling us about ourselves. So we have this yeshus, and this yeshus means you really feel your existence. And because you so much feel your existence, you have no space for someone else's existence. You literally, that's how the Rebbe writes it, you're just not going to be space to anyone else. It's your world. It's your reality. You could be, by the way, a very nice person with a lot of yeshus. You can have a lot of yeshus, And you could be really nice as long as everyone's going along with what you decide is how things need to be done. It might not necessarily project as you're being mean and nasty, but the Yeshus is very, very, very strong. If we're going into this sinas chinam, the Rebbe is saying, like I said with Maisa with the Tzemach Tzedek, because your Yeshus takes up so much space, there's no room for anyone else's space. So for another person to be in your orbit, by definition, they have to minimize themselves, or you will minimize them, because that's the only way it's going to work. Because you need to take up a lot of the space. Now, very simply, without obviously, needing to share, but can you think of anybody in your world, doesn't have to be in your immediate world, but that you could sort of see this with? Someone that takes up a lot of the space, and for people to work in their world, that people have to dance around their space?
Isn't that the definition of a child?
Definitely, definitely. That is a lot of children. By nature, yes.
Well,
I
that's
hate
the
to, I
irony
hate
of it,
to,
is that the people, when adults are taking up a lot of space, it's because they're living in their inner child a lot. They're in pain. They're either being triggered or they have a huge lack in their life. So they're flailing like a child, and they're like, "Hello, somebody, anybody?"
Yeah.
And so they just want to be seen.
That's why I always say I'm a child trying to get in touch with my inner adult.
You're one of the most mature adults I know, Yona Rivka.
I'll,
At least,
I'll
she,
let
at
you-
least, she's, at
let
least
you
she's
know
an
if I
honest one. At least she's an
I-
honest one.
I think that women in general are able to actually, oh gosh, I don't know, be more humble when it comes to their yeshut. And I wish you could teach this to our Beit Mashiach guys.
I think if we can be frankly gender racist here, I think, I think women, we all have yeshus. Yeshus is endemic to being human. It's how Hashem made us. And the journey of our life is to overcome it, which is why what Yona Rivka said was really a very deep point. Like, meaning maybe children don't have the social mores to hide it, so they just can freely express all that yeshus. And when we get a little older, if you're a teenager, you're self-conscious. If you're an adult, you know societally you can't necessarily act out all of the things you feel, and children just do. But on a deeper level, the challenge of our life, and actually we're told that challenge continues after our life, is bittul. Right? That like key word in Hasidic lexicon is bittul, like whoa, bittul and a pnimi, and bittul means that transformation from yeshus, that movement from yeshus. The more you can mevatel yourself, the more you're charring away at that yeshus. And we are told that literally the neshamas and Gan Eden work on it too. Now, what's the yeshus of a neshama? I don't remember, but there's a concept of this constant Yelchel Mechayil El Chayil, ascending higher and higher, including in Gan Eden, ascending and ascending more and more bittul, which means less and less yeshus. So I think you're right, and it's not because we're better. It's just the nature of women, I guess. I could hypothesize because we reflect Malchus, and because the energy of Malchus is bittul, les lemigarmu klum. Malchus has nothing of her own. All she has is what she receives from others. So since that is the core spiritual energy of women, maybe that's why it's easier for us. I definitely think we can be afflicted with yeshus, and I definitely think we can be afflicted with sinas chinam. But I
It
think
does
you're
look
right.
different with women. There is a female. Remember once, like 7 years ago, my husband and I were psychoanalyzing this Nikuda. We were like, what is, there is a very big difference between the male ego and the female ego. Men do come across as more egotistical in that sense. Like they don't hide it as much. It comes out with this more like an outer pride, because I guess Ishtar and it's like the male way to do things. But like, yeah, there is a female ego which it's more refined and it's finer, but it could be more stark.
Makes sense. Well, because women are gevura. So, so when it
Mhm.
comes out, it can have a lot of strength.
Anything we do is starker. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, I definitely agree with what Leah is saying. I agree with what Rachel is saying. I don't think women are immune to yeshus. No, we definitely journey to bittul our whole life, just like men do. But I agree with Rachel that we express it in a different way, and it could be because of our malchus origin that we do have on some level a natural bittul, or maybe like Leah is saying, we just wouldn't feel comfortable expressing it the way a man would feel comfortable expressing it. I don't know.
Well, I also think that a woman is a bria from the man. You know, the man is came from the afar, and the woman is from the tzela of the man. So she doesn't feel as the nothingness maybe as the man would feel,
Oh,
because
okay. That's interesting. Maybe we have better self-esteem, so we don't need to express ourselves so much. Maybe, maybe. Okay, let's keep going. So basically, the Rebbe is saying here that the Yeshus requires one to take up the space. That's like endemic to Yeshus, which by definition means that the other person is stepping on your space. That the other person makes you feel like you don't have the space you need. Right? This is not, this is the mimer. This is literally the mimer. That because of his sense of self, his ego, he has no space for the other person. That it's a hechrech. You have no choice. The other one is minimizing your space. So in other words, the Rebbe is saying, we call it sinas chinam, but there really is a reason for the sinah. But we can't say the reason because that doesn't sound very nice. But the reason for the sinah is you feel the other person's taking up your space. Now, why do you feel the other person taking up your space? Because you need to take up all the space. So by definition, any other person's going to take up your space, unless they sort of just smile and nod as you talk and keep smiling and nodding. But otherwise, they're going to take up your space because you need to take up all the space because of your yeshus. So the more yeshus, the more likely that sinas chinam is going to get triggered, it's going to flare. And if someone has less yeshus, some, so they take up some space, and then it's not automatic, it's not a given that the other person takes up all your space, because there is room for other people in your orbit, but maybe the other person is going to step on those areas where your yeshus says, oh, this is my space. This is my territory. And then the sinas chinam can flare. Why are we calling it sinas chinam? Because the essence point is they're taking up my space. Not that they're doing anything wrong. Not that they're doing anything negative. They're taking up my space. The yeshus is attacked. And therefore the yeshus flares back with this sinas chinam. The Rebbe says, what's going to happen then? You're going to find some justification that you're not going to be like that 3-year-old child that could just have the tantrum and scream because they want their way. You're an adult. So you're going to find some justification instead of saying, well, his existence makes me feel farfetched. His existence makes me have less existence. So you're going to come up with some excuse. But the coming up with some excuse is after the essence fact that they're taking up your space. And the problem in the taking up your space is because your yeshus is requiring all the space. And that is how the Rebbe Rashab dissects the relationships on the side of Klippa. Well, what's going on the side of Kedusha? We want to grow, we want to move, we would like to enhance the Kedusha in our lives. It's easy to point fingers and say, oh, so-and-so has that. I see so-and-so has all these issues. They should learn this mimer, What is happening on the side of Kedusha? On the side of Kedusha is Bitul. What happens when you're in a space of Bitul? When you're in a space of Bitul, you're in a space of Hiskalalus. The Rebbe Rashab says, Yichud and Hiskalalus. What does Yichud and Hiskalalus mean? It means in English unity and inclusion. Inclusion means you're embracive. you're embracive. So let's, I'm gonna pick on Yona Rivka because she's the only face I see. So you're an artist and you're making music. So if you're a Yeshus driven artist, which is the normal fate of man, because most men are Yeshus driven. I don't mean here man as a gender. I mean most humans are Yeshus driven. So you need to make your music and you need to do it your way. And it'll be very hard to collaborate with someone else because, like, no, that's all wrong. That's not my vision. It doesn't work. But if someone has moved to the side of Kedusha, if they're in a space of Bitul, they can collaborate. And it's beautiful to see because we don't see it too often. And the music or whatever else that's produced is so much more beautiful. I'm not saying this from me, like, oh, let me give an example of my Bitul. No. I want to give you an example of my friend's Bitul. This was
there's a bit of both.
this was last year, Chaf Shvat weekend of the Kinnis HaShluchos. So I was in town. In town means I was in Crown Heights, and a very close friend of mine was also in Crown Heights. We were friends for years and years and years and years. And she, her name is Simcha. She's a shluch in Brazil, and she was asked to speak. You know, Shabbos after davening, they always have someone speak in 770 for the women. You know, sort of informally, but whatever. So we were talking before Shabbos, and she said, I have such a great idea. Why don't we do it together? I'm like, whoa, that's cool. What do you mean? She said, like, I'll speak a little, then you speak a little, then I'll speak a little, then you speak a little. And it was like I have to say, sadly enough, it was such an innovative idea. Right, because, you know, you're the speaker and you have something prepared, which means you're taking up all the space. You have your speech, you have your Dvar Torah, you have the Sikha you're going to give over, whatever it is. It's nothing evil, but you have what your message is. And it was like, okay, let's do this. And we did. It was so beautiful. It really felt like fresh and unusual, different. To have like she spoke and then I danced on her words and she responded to mine. It was obviously, you know, but it was just that idea of like, so for us, it was sort of natural because, well, we're good friends. So we let each other into our space, right? But this vision, I'm sort of giving this as an example, and it sounds weird to say this, but really it was her Bitul because she was the speaker and she was the one that invited me into her space. But that's like sort of a taste of what that means. That's what I'm thinking as I'm giving this over. That when you're in this space of Bitul, there's this natural yichud. You fuse with other people. There's a hiskalus. There's a collaboration. There's inclusion. There's melding. There's blending. It becomes beautiful. Your strengths and someone else's strengths become something far, far more beautiful than either one of you alone.
And it was a beautiful event.
Oh, Esther, you were there?
I was.
Okay, thank you.
And it was great. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So did you get that sense as the audience, that sort of Bitul piece?
Totally. And it was like such synchronicity. It was like a dance.
Yes.
You know, where like no one's trying to be the star and you were like going back and forth. And actually what I got most of all was like your connection between each other, like the way you were giving to each other. It was like so kind and so beautiful. And you're right, unusual.
Yeah, thank you. That was beautiful. It was all my friend's idea. So I give her all the credit. And but that's I'm giving that as a vision, you know, for us as this vision, how we integrate that into our lives. Each one of us, I guess, in that place where we shine, and I mean, obviously I know Esther and her shiningness, but each one of us in that place to say there are other beautiful voices, and like to be in that space of Bitul, like to blend those voices instead of it being your beautiful voice, being this harmony, this synergy of different voices. This is this vision the Rebbe is saying. If we're on the side of Klippa, we're in a space of Yeshus. If we're in a space of Yeshus, there's no room for anyone else. They're just minimizing our space. I mean, if you think of the political elections we just experienced, you know, it's so nasty. Was it always so nasty? I think so. I think so. Just now there's more fuel for the nastiness. You've got all the tools of modern technology and social media to make it spread across the world. But it's by definition that's what it is. And then like taking all that and like going to, and what's a godly space? What's a Jewish space? Bitul. Bitul means make room for someone else. Quiet your voice so another voice can be heard. Maybe your voice is louder. Maybe your voice is more dominant. Maybe your voice is more powerful. Maybe your voice is better. But quiet your voice that another voice could be heard dancing with your voice. And that's.
Yeah, and I think that this year's politics, it was a different set of elections. Like my son Nachum is really into all the presidents and all the elections. He could tell you everything about all the elections and in American history, and there were times that they were like basically like friends, like just running against each other, basically the same ideologies, and like if you win, it's gonna be good for America. If I win, it's good for America. And they sat
That must have been a long time ago.
right. But there's a really intense klipa that was fighting God, and the Goyim were all in on it. All these YouTubers, everyone's talking about it. They're, what is up with the Democrats now that they are fighting God? Literally, like we need to stand up to them and make sure Trump wins because they're fighting the genders that God made and they're fighting God's ways and, just everything from A to Z. And because of that, they had to make sure Trump wins because this is a fight for God. A lot of non-Jewish YouTubers were saying that.
A lot of religious groups got in on that. So yeah, a lot of religious groups did feel that. But I think in general, like, okay, in my 50 some years of American politics, I'm not talking specifically about this election. In general, I think just it gets nastier, 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 and more like condoned nastiness, like expected nastiness. Like we're running on knocking the other person down, and demonizing the other person. That's sort of like the expected. Whatever. Listen, it's obviously not a space of kedusha. What can we say? But just this vision of what the space we want to create, which is the space of kedusha, which is this place where, as the Rebbe says, and I say makom el hazulas, you give space for the other person. I'm trying to make this really practical. This is like one little hour, a mimer that I did teach part of at some points, probably on my channel, and it's many classes. If anyone wants, they could go on say Hechaltzu, get that playlist. It's many classes, and it's many Fabreinians, Fabreinian after Fabreinian, week after week on these concepts. But just the essence point here is to make it really practical, giving space deliberately. It doesn't happen on its own. Deliberately giving space for another voice, giving space for other people, giving space for other ideas. And sometimes even like I challenge myself sometimes, because this isn't natural for me at all, like to listen to someone else and like find a way that their idea is better than mine. Like, because my nature is to think that my idea is the best, right? I mean, it's my idea, it's what I thought of. And like challenge to like listen to the other person and find how their idea is better than yours. Find the good in their idea. Find the better in their idea. Maybe it could be a fusion of a few ideas of your idea and the other person's idea. But it's so easy. And again, because sometimes we could think of this in like very neon colors, like Yesha, Sinas Chinam. Oh wow, there's horrible people out there that do all that. Like some horrible people out there, And the Rebbe Shab wants us to look at this mimer inside, not thinking of the people outside with their yeshus and their klipa and their sinas chinam, but inside ourselves. As it's a very avodatic mimer. It also gets very spiritual as the oisios go on, but this part is just very practical. So really, the Rebbe is saying on a very practical level, kedusha, bitul, practical. Bitul is also this big word, so like, yeah, whatever, maybe next lifetime, maybe in Gan Eden, so to speak. There says, give space to another person. Consciously give space. Consciously minimize the space you're taking up, that another voice can be heard, that other ideas can be accepted, can be utilized, can be done. Look and look with an eye of like, you're going to say something good. You're going to say something I'm going to agree with. You're going to say something I want to hear. That's just like in a very practical way the Rebbe is saying, Klipa, Yeshus, Sinas Chinam, no space. Everyone's stepping on your space. Kedusha, Bitul, oneness and inclusion, giving space. So practical, giving space. If you can give space, you can say, I don't have such Bitul. Fine, fake it, just give space. Just try to give space. Try to lessen your voice. Try to let other voices be heard in whatever forum is your life. Like, with your husband, with your kid, whatever it is. In whatever forum it is, that in of itself will help the bittul flow. When you're, just like everything else, when you're acting that way, it's going to pull it out inside of you, because of course we all have this inside of ourselves. This is our godly soul's energy. So give space and watch your bittul come forth. Watch your bittul come out.
Okay, so here's the challenge. There are times that we need to bring our voice out and be heard as mothers of homes. And sometimes our voice gets, drowned out or not, taken for what it needs to be taken for. And I remember when I was dorm counselor and you were telling us over the phone that in order to be a dorm counselor, you have to have Bitzel. Otherwise, you're going to get totally exploded by the teenagers, right? But in order to have Bitzel, you need to have self-confidence. I remember we were having that conversation about it. And it's an interesting balance where we can't totally lose ourselves. And we need our voice to be strong enough. It's like there's a therapist here for Ellie today, and she was begging him in a really soft voice to listen to her. She's like chasing him through the house. Come, do you want to play a game with me? Come, please, come. And he was just like, oh my gosh, Mommy, tell her to leave. I felt so bad for her. But, it's like there is a way that we need to know how to take up space, but with Bittul, so it's a delicate balance.
So
This is a
what you're
question.
saying is a good point. I think what Leia's saying, practically speaking, so Leia said there's bittul. Let me phrase it more like, Leia spoke about the idea of self-confidence. Bittul doesn't mean a lack of confidence. Bittul doesn't mean I'm a doormat, I'm a shmata, I'm letting everyone else's voice be heard because I don't have anything worth being heard. I don't have anything worth saying. No, it's the opposite. When you do believe in yourself, you have the space to be bottled and let other voices be heard. If you were insecure, you wouldn't be able to let other voices be heard because you'd be nervous. Their voice is going to be better than yours. If you're comfortable with your own voice, you're comfortable with letting other voices be heard and not being insecure about other voices being heard. So maybe what your point is maybe that's the point you were saying, like to really be Bitul, you have to believe in yourself. Bitul doesn't mean the lack of believing in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And if you're believing in yourself, is it like, what's the conundrum here? If you're believing in yourself, but it's no, someone, I remember once someone speaking in the high school, I don't remember who he was, some guy from Israel. And I don't remember who he was. I don't remember his point, but I do remember this one idea he said. Sometimes you just hear one thing. That's what I feel. Somebody could walk into my class late, leave early. I'm like, okay, they got what they were supposed to get. So he said, self-confidence is like a hard term in Hasidic thought because we're trying to minimize self. So he said the way he phrases it is, I don't think he said it in English. He probably spoke Hebrew, but like God confidence. Like this vision of self as a yid, as an neshama, as Hashem's representative in this world, as the Chayesar and Beis, we're the Rebbe's representatives. Every Jew is a representative, is a shliach of the Rebbe. So the more we know that, or I guess in this case he was talking to high school girls, so I don't know if he's talking about how they're supposed to raise their children. Maybe I viewed it as how you're supposed to raise your children. The more we give people, students, mushpos, children, ourselves, this message, my infinite value as a piece of the Eibishter. So that's the confidence I'm supposed to be drawing on. So it's not a yeshus feeding confidence. It's a bittul confidence. Maybe it's a very nuanced concept, and maybe it sounds like I'm just playing with words and it's the same thing, but I'm just playing with words. But it's really not. It's really a very, very strong point. If your sense of self is coming because you're a Jew and you're Chelek Elokah, and you know everything Chassidus says, or at least you know some things Chassidus says, about your infinite value, and you're the purpose of creation, and I'm Hashem's only child, and Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, and Perek Aleph of Tanya, and all of that. So you have such energy through your veins, but it's not Yeshus energy. It's Abishter energy. So you have confidence in yourself, but it's not Yeshus confidence. It could be Bitul confidence. And when you have that Bitul confidence, you want to let a lot of voices be heard. That's the space of Bitul. You want other people's voices heard. You appreciate them. That makes it far more beautiful.
I want to add that, like, in response to, like, you know, our voices need to be heard as a mother and all that. I think a lot of times as mothers, we tend to kind of need to yell and make our voices heard when we feel when our voices aren't heard. Meaning, if I know that my voice is what I'm doing, what I'm saying, you know, what you're saying, like that confidence, and I don't need to yell, you know? When do I feel like I need to yell and scream so everybody can hear me is when I feel like I'm not being heard. So I don't know, I felt like that went with what you were saying about, like, when you're confident, then you can allow other voices.
And of course, just sometimes we're human and we lose it.
Yeah, for sure.
Besides those moments when we lose it, I could
But
definitely say
I
with
feel
my
like even that, it's like, when do I lose it? I feel like I'm talking to the wall.
when my yeshus is being challenged, when my yeshus is being flouted, when that
Yeah,
child is having a little tantrum inside of me and
yeah,
getting out
yeah.
because you're not listening to me. Why
Exactly.
aren't you listening to me? I was being so nice and speaking so softly and giving you so much respect. Why aren't you listening? Yes. We
Yeah,
don't know about any of those situations. They're all very
no.
hypothetical, theoretical. I do know talking about your voices being heard, and it's the power, the strength of silence. I could say for Beryl, who's my Down syndrome child, who's 11 and a half, I've learned, totally contrary to nature, that the less words I use, the more they're heard. So I don't think it's only true for Down syndrome 11 and a half year olds, but it's very
No.
obvious with him. If I want him to hear, I have to say very few words. I'll say it. He's not listening. It's so against my nature, but I'm quiet and like I'll point. He's like, "Don't point." Okay, I'll stop pointing. I'm just be quiet. I'm not saying another word. Like he heard it, and the more I talk, the less he's going to hear it. Because if I talk, he's going to be engaging and responding. And if I'm quiet, like there's hope he's just going to give in and be like, okay, and do it. So, it's very obvious with him, but I think it's probably true for all of us in one way or another.
Yeah, it's like, the techniques of how to talk so kids will listen and listen so kids will talk. Like the Fishbane Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
So some of their techniques, say it with a note, say it with a word, instead of saying, oh, honey, I think you left your backpack here, whatever. Just be like, honey, your backpack. Just try to minimize it to one word. Oh, sweetie, the dishes. And that's all you need to say instead of 3 sentences.
Right.
I think they also say about, like, not using the name. Focus on the word that you need to tell them, like not even saying their name. That name that you call
Dishes.
only when you're angry, the full name.
So I think the point is, guess what? We do have Yeshus inside of us. And guess what? We do have, as Leah called it, that child inside of us that gets really annoyed when we're not being listened to. And so we get to practice Bitul a lot of times if we have children in our life.